야.
This was the most brutal beatdown Korea's hottest leading man had ever taken.
난 너 졸라 재수없거든. 착한 척하지 마.
Staring at a muscle-bound woman, Hwang Jung-min widened his eyes and froze dead silent. Just moments ago, she'd been getting it on with Dong-hoon in the other room. Not only was she left unsatisfied, but she got caught in the act by Young-tae. Nowhere to vent her frustration, the woman slapped him so hard it echoed. To her shock, Hwang Jung-min straight up peed his pants. This movie is based on a true story, so true, in fact, that the director didn't even bother changing the actor's real name. He is Hwang Jung-min, a red-hot Korean superstar, playing himself. Let's just call him Jung-min. The movie's intense and suspenseful, so much so I held in my pee just to make it through. Right after the film's press conference wrapped, Jung-min's manager, always stuck to him like glue, noticed the actor had had a drink or two. Not feeling great about him heading home alone, the manager offered to drive, but Jung-min, being kind-hearted, declined. He didn't want to trouble his already exhausted manager. Turns out, that one choice changed his life. On his way home, Jung-min made a quick stop at a convenience store near his building. He bought some medicine. Years of heart issues had made those pills a constant in his life. While paying, the shop owner mentioned a recent news story. A cafe owner and a waitress had been kidnapped. "Be careful," he said. Neither of them paid much attention, but as soon as Jung-min stepped outside, he noticed several men leaning on his car. Outnumbered, he stayed calm and polite. One of the men approached with a smile and reached out to shake hands. "Big fan," he said, asking for a selfie. Jung-min, thinking it was just another harmless fan encounter, let his guard down. He politely declined the photo, using the drinking excuse, and turned to leave only to hear the guy call out and ask him a strange question.
연예인 누구랑 해봤어요?
Jung-min cursed under his breath. Without warning, Dong-hoon got right up in his face, taunting him.
어? 싸움 잘해? 싸움 잘하냐고.
Seeing he was surrounded, Jung-min backed off and walked away, but then he realized he'd left his wallet and car keys at the store. As he turned to go back, a truck screeched to a halt beside him. Suddenly, an arm wrapped around his neck. Another man stunned him with a taser. When he came to, he was in a warehouse. Even as a top-tier actor, Jung-min was still stunned to find that no matter where he went, even in a kidnapping, he'd run into fans.
헐, 황정민이네?
Then Bae-yeol pulled back a tarp to reveal another kidnapped woman. She poured water into her mouth like the woman hadn't had a drop in days. Meanwhile, Dong-hoon started filming, wanting to document the moment they abducted a celebrity. He even tried to take a selfie. Jung-min, still thinking this might be some bizarre prank show, started yelling, demanding to be let go. But before he could even finish, Dong-hoon slapped him across the face again and again.
아, 얼굴은 때리지 마. 이따 인터뷰 있어. 야, 이 아저씨 완전 재밌네. 어? 아직도 상황 파악이 안 돼?
Only then did Jung-min realize this wasn't a joke. It was a real kidnapping. Then the gang's leader, Choi Ji-won, walked in. As Jung-min opened his mouth to speak, Dong-hoon kicked him to the ground.
이러면 안 되는 거잖아요. 도대체 내가 뭘 잘못했는데요?
아니 내 입장에선 돈 많은 대스타가 떡하니 나오는데 그냥 보낼 수가 없잖아. 안 그래요?
Turns out, the kidnapping was totally random, but they made it clear, if Jung-min didn't wire the money to their account by 10 p.m., he'd end up just like the other victims in the video. Turns out, the kidnapped woman's name was So-yeon, the same waitress who went missing with the cafe owner. For a ransom of 200 million won, the cafe owner only put up 80 million. Just like that, the boss shot him dead on the spot. Jung-min watched the whole thing, trembling in absolute fear, but what really caught him off guard was what came next. Since they hadn't received the ransom by 10 p.m., Choi Ji-won turned the gun on So-yeon, penniless and desperate. So-yeon pleaded for her life. Seeing this, Jung-min shouted in panic, saying he'd pay the ransom for the girl.
내가 너한테 얼마 달라고 그랬지? 말해.
Since her ransom was 200 million won, Jung-min offered 500 million to cover both of them, but the kidnappers exploded with rage. "You're Hwang Jung-min. You've starred in blockbuster after blockbuster, each one raking in billions, and now you're offering just 500 million for two people? You think this is a joke?" Jung-min quickly explained that 500 million was the daily withdrawal limit at the bank.
5억이 지금 내가 할 수 있는 최선이에요. 대신 돈 받으면 우리 두 사람 다 풀어주세요.
Choi Ji-won couldn't argue with that, but furious, he fired a shot into the air. Unfortunately, that was just the beginning of Jung-min's nightmare. These kidnappers were far more brutal than he'd imagined. After murdering the man from the video, the gang chopped the body into 17 pieces and left them in front of the victim's family home. Thanks to surveillance footage, the police identified the suspect as Dong-hoon and even caught the license plate of their vehicle.
염동훈이 사람을 납치해서 2억을 받기로 했는데 8천만 원밖에 못 받았다고 가족한테 시체 17토막을 보냈대요. 8천만 원어치라고. 방금 시인했죠. 염동훈한테 차 팔았다고 해. 야, 생각나는 거 있으면 다 풀어라. 납치 공범으로 시체 넣기 전에.
Meanwhile, Young-tae approached Jung-min with a creepy grin, claiming to be a die-hard fan. He asked Jung-min to recite a famous movie line. When Jung-min hesitated, Young-tae's face darkened with menace. Left with no choice, Jung-min reluctantly gave him the line.
들어와 이 놈아. 됐어요?
Young-tae lit up with satisfaction, but just then, Choi Ji-won barged back in with his crew. Apparently, a large withdrawal required Jung-min's bank card and security token, neither of which he had on him.
야, 그럼 돈은 어떻게 찾으라고? 집에 가서 카드 가져가세요. 어차피 지금 집에 아무도 없으니까. 뭐라는 거야 이거, 씨.
다른 놈들은 다 살려달라고 난리였는데 우리 황 씨는 안 무서워?
제가 약속했잖아요. 전 여기서 나가고 싶은 생각밖에 없어요. 그러니까 빨리 집에 가서 카드 가져가세요.
Now that Dong-hoon's identity had been exposed, Choi Ji-won decided to go to Jung-min's house himself to get the card. They filled glass bottles with nails to make homemade explosives and stuffed them into their backpacks. Before leaving, Choi Ji-won gave clear instructions: if we're not back by 10 tonight, kill them both. Clearly, he knew this trip could be deadly. As the engine roared off into the night, So-yeon turned to Jung-min and thanked him, but he had some grim news. The internet was blowing up with posts about his disappearance. His sister had already called the police. No doubt the cops were investigating everywhere, but the key was surviving the night. Otherwise, they still wouldn't make it out alive. They had to find a way to escape fast. Before they could think of a plan, Young-tae suddenly stormed toward So-yeon, his intentions written all over his face. But before he could act, a lustful moan echoed from deep in the hallway. Young-tae immediately perked up and rushed toward the sound. Peeking into the room, he swallowed hard as he watched the scene unfold. Meanwhile, Jung-min spotted a shard of glass on the ground. He signaled to So-yeon to kick it over to him, but little did he know, he was dealing with the ultimate clumsy teammate.
뭐 하시게요? 하지 마세요.
제발 그냥 이쪽으로 좀 차라고. 여기서 나가기 싫어요?
After finally convincing So-yeon, things quickly fell apart. Her aim with the glass shard was as hopeless as a pro soccer player with 2 left feet. Jung-min had no choice but to inch toward it himself. The sound of his chair scraping the floor echoed through the warehouse, and So-yeon nearly jumped out of her skin. Jung-min reached for the glass, but overextended and hit the ground hard. To make matters worse, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Panicked, he tried again and again to keep up like a desperate gymnast. As the steps grew louder, he summoned every ounce of strength and managed to sit upright just as Sate Baeyal entered the room. But their chance to cut the ropes was gone. The kidnappers' fun time was over. Thinking fast, Jung-min told Dong-hoon he had a press conference scheduled soon. If his manager couldn't reach him, they'd immediately suspect something and call the police. Dong-hoon was reluctant but finally handed him a phone. The call came from an unknown number, so the manager hung up right away. Jung-min quickly gave them his friend Sung-woong's number instead. On the phone, he claimed he was tied up with something important and couldn't make it to the press event.
아니 형 무슨 일인데 인터뷰를 빠꾸로 해 형님이? 에? 형 혹시 뭐 납치라도 당했어?
The mood in the room instantly turned cold. Sensing Dong-hoon's growing suspicion, Jung-min said there had been an emergency at home, and asked Sung-woong to apologize on his behalf to Seo Do-chul and Choi Cheol-gi. Dong-hoon grabbed the phone and demanded answers.
배우 박성웅 몰라요?
살려는 드릴게.
기자들 뭔 말을 전하냐고.
Jung-min hurriedly explained that he'd previously bailed on those 2 reporters and was now making amends through a friend. Meanwhile, the police visited a prison for intel. A guard revealed that during his sentence, Dong-hoon had been running with Choi Ji-won. Ji-won once threatened a mining boss with explosives and had a prior kidnapping conviction. All signs pointed to Choi Ji-won as the real mastermind. The police rushed to raid his known address only to find the lifeless body of Ji-won's elderly mother. Back on the other side, Ji-won and Young-rock hijacked a taxi and used it to head to Young-min's home. They tore the place apart but couldn't find the bank card. Frustrated, Ji-won called Dong-hoon and told him to make Young-min talk. Dong-hoon didn't hesitate. He wrapped a wire around Young-min's neck and threatened to kill him unless he fessed up. Choking, Young-min confessed he had left his wallet at the convenience store the night before, card and token included. Frustrated, Choi Ji-won stormed off to the convenience store. Young-min's manager hadn't seen him all day. Worried, he headed over to Young-min's apartment to check on him. Right then, he got a call from Sun Won, who told him about Young-min's earlier phone call, specifically how he'd asked him to apologize to 2 reporters. The manager was confused. Those names weren't on the event's guest list. Then it hit him that was the name of the cop in Young-min's movie. A chill ran down his spine. Was Young-min secretly signaling him to call the police? He hung up in a hurry and rushed into the apartment only to find the place completely ransacked. He called the cops immediately. Meanwhile, Young-min suddenly suffered a heart attack. He begged the kidnappers for emergency heart meds. Dong-hoon thought he was faking it until Young-min spread his legs and peed himself. Sae-bael grabbed Dong-hoon and warned him, "You can't let our cash cow die on us." Reluctantly, Dong-hoon agreed to go buy the meds. Over at the convenience store, Choi Ji-won showed up pretending to be Young-min's manager, but the clerk insisted the wallet could only be returned to the owner himself. Furious, Ji-won called Dong-hoon and told him to put Young-min on the line to confirm his identity. But Dong-hoon was still out buying medicine. Ji-won exploded and unleashed a storm of curses.
너 3분 내로 전화해서 그 새끼 바꿔. 1초만 늦어봐. 너 나머지 손가락 내가 다 잘라버린다.
The truth was Dong-hoon had been holding back his resentment toward Ji-won for a long time. And now, it was boiling over. Losing all patience, Choi Ji-won stormed back into the store, grabbed a bottle of beer, and smashed it over the clerk's head. He then destroyed the surveillance cameras and tore the place apart until finally he found Young-min's wallet. Back at the warehouse, Young-min collapsed again, this time from missing his meds. Young-tae panicked. Under So-yeon's instruction, he nervously cut Young-min's ropes with trembling hands. Young-min lay there, still as death. So-yeon shouted at Young-tae to give him CPR. Just as their lips touched, Young-min's eyes flew open. He drove the glass shard straight into Young-tae's throat. Young-tae shrieked and stumbled backward in terror. Young-min grabbed a stool and smashed it over him again and again until he stopped moving. He freed So-yeon, and together they ran, but the front door was locked. They pushed the door with all their might, but the noise alerted Sae-bael. Young-min begged her to let them go, swearing he wouldn't go to the cops. But Sae-bael raised her gun and pulled the trigger.
절대 신고 안 할게.
Just then, Dong-hoon returned. As Sae-bael shouted his name, Young-min lunged and grabbed the gun. The two began to wrestle violently. The gun flew to the ground. Seeing the door begin to open, So-yeon dove for the gun. Young-min pinned Sae-bael down, but she bit his finger and shoved him off. She got to her feet only to be met with a bullet from So-yeon, right in the gut. Everyone froze in shock. Dong-hoon stood outside the door, staring at the scene, shattered. Young-min pulled So-yeon to her feet and ran. Dong-hoon looked down at the bleeding Sae-bael, his face twisted in rage. Young-tae had also come to. Now, he and Dong-hoon were in full pursuit. Under the shadow of a large boulder, Young-min told So-yeon they couldn't both keep running. They'd be caught. He told her to hide there while he lured them away. But as he ran off, he didn't realize Dong-hoon was already hiding under the very same rock, staring directly at So-yeon. Young-min nearly slipped into a deep ravine. As he climbed back up, he found Young-tae pointing a gun at him. "You lied to me," he snarled. "You played with my feelings." Just as Young-min tried to make another run for it, Young-tae pulled the trigger. Meanwhile, Choi Ji-won finally got his hands on the bank card and key. But no matter how many times he tried, the code didn't work. Young-min had fooled him again. Frustrated, Choi stepped out of the alley, calling Dong-hoon. What he didn't know was that the police already had his basic info. Without concrete evidence, the officers approached carefully, asking him to show his ID. Choi refused. Then the female officer called him by name and ordered him to raise his hands. Right at that moment, a white car came barreling through the street. One of the officers was struck and thrown to the ground. Inside the car, Young Rock helped Choi escape. In the heart of the city, a deadly chase unfolded. Police cruisers sped after the white sedan, which eventually swerved into a narrow alley and crashed into a barbershop. Officers surrounded the area. Bloodied but still raging, Young Rock burst out of the shop, swinging like a beast. He wrestled with the cops until they finally got him under control. Then someone threw a homemade bomb, and through the thick haze, Choi Ji-won calmly walked out like it was nothing. By the time the cops made it through the alley, he was already gone. Back at the station, Young Rock was brought in. Wild-eyed, he suddenly started shouting their crimes to the media one by one, and when he blurted out that they had also kidnapped Hwang Jung-min, the news went nuclear. Taken to the interrogation room, Young Rock sat in total silence, ignoring every question. 30 minutes passed. Still nothing. Then, an old detective stepped in. Calmly, he offered Young Rock a cigarette and began philosophizing about life. But none of it worked. Without warning, Young Rock bit his own tongue and killed himself on the spot. Meanwhile, Jung-min finally regained consciousness. Fighting the pain, he tied up his injured leg with his shirt and began limping through the forest. Suddenly, he spotted a house in the distance. Excited, he approached and begged the old man for help just to use a phone. The old man told him the phone was inside. Jung-min entered and fiddled with it for a while, but it was dead. As he turned to leave, he realized the door wouldn't open. The old man had locked him in. From outside, the old man called the police, but the cop on the line dismissed him as some crazy old man. Just then, Dong-hoon showed up. He asked the old man if he'd seen Jung-min. The old man shook his head, but his nervousness gave him away. Dong-hoon didn't press the issue. He just smirked and walked off. Seconds later, the old man was knocked out cold by a brick. News of Jung-min's abduction exploded online. Meanwhile, Baeyel's condition was rapidly getting worse. Jung-min was tied up once again. The police, now fully aware of the criminal group's identity, set up a massive operation at Jung-min's home. Elsewhere, Yong-tae scrolled through the news on his phone, unaware that the unconscious Jung-min nearby was listening to everything. At a shady underground money laundering joint, Choi Ji-won called Dong-hoon. Still empty-handed, he urged Dong-hoon to finish the job and kill Jung-min. Just then, the laundering boss walked by, reminding Choi that 10% would be deducted from the 80 million won. Dong-hoon overheard. Choi had promised him a cut, but now he realized Choi never planned to share the money. With wanted posters everywhere and no ransom collected from Jung-min, Choi Ji-won decided to take the full 80 million and vanish. But Dong-hoon had finally seen through him. From that moment on, they were enemies. Meanwhile, Choi Ji-won called Yong-tae again and threatened Jung-min over the phone. "I'm right outside your house. Give me the correct passcode, or I'll kill every one of your family members." But Jung-min, having heard the latest news coverage, mocked him instead. Dong-hoon, overhearing the call, walked over mistakenly thinking that Yong-tae and Choi Ji-won were plotting to take the money and run. Furious, he grabbed the phone and smashed it, cutting the call short. Realizing these people were no longer reliable allies, Choi Ji-won decided to initiate his final plan. He flagged down a cab on the street. Back at the precinct, officers were just about to head out when Choi suddenly appeared, arms raised, turning himself in. Stunned, the officers took him into custody and began interrogation. Choi didn't waste time. He laid out his terms: 20 years off his sentence and a monthly stipend of 3 million won. Only then would he reveal the hostage location. If not, his partner would execute the hostage at exactly 10 p.m. There were less than 2 hours left. After some hesitation, the police agreed. They split into two teams, one escorting Choi to the supposed warehouse, the other following behind. But just as the second team was about to leave, the old man who'd previously locked up Jung-min burst into the station. Detective Han waved him off, assuming it was another delusional rant, and sped off. That was a mistake. Back at the warehouse, Baeyel had already succumbed to her injuries. Her death pushed Dong-hoon over the edge. He decided to kill the hostage early, but Yong-tae blocked him, insisting they follow Choi Ji-won's orders and wait until 10 p.m. That only deepened Dong-hoon's suspicions. Yong-tae must be in on it with Choi. He snapped, beating Yong-tae senseless. Then he entered the room and held a gun to Jung-min's head, ready to pull the trigger, until Yong-tae appeared behind him with a metal rod. Then freed Jung-min and So-yeon, all while muttering to himself. A second shot hit the fuse box. The lights went out. In the chaos, Jung-min and So-yeon made their escape. Meanwhile, Choi arrived with the police and knocked on the warehouse door. No response. They broke it down. Almost immediately, an officer tripped over a wire, pulling back a plastic sheet. They saw the entire place was rigged with homemade bombs. This was a trap. If the operation failed, the plan was to lure everyone here and die together. Back with the second police team, the female officer made a discovery. She'd spotted the old man earlier and, unlike the others, noticed his designer shoes. They looked familiar. She pulled up a news photo of Hwang Jung-min and there they were, the exact same shoes. She realized the old man wasn't crazy, he'd seen the hostage. Dong-hoon eventually tracked down Jung-min's hiding spot. At that moment, the female officer kicked the door in. Dong-hoon reacted instantly, taking Jung-min hostage and using him as a human shield. Jung-min pleaded for the officers to protect So-yeon. He was dragged out. Dong-hoon shoved him into a car and ordered him to drive. But as they reached the exit, Choi Ji-won blocked their path. The car swerved and slammed into a wall. Gunfire erupted. Choi opened fire on the cops. He shot Dong-hoon dead in the passenger seat. Next, it was Jung-min's turn. Acting fast, he slammed the gas and rammed Choi head-on. The car slammed into the wall, but unbelievably, Choi Ji-won came out without a scratch. Choi Ji-won began grappling with the female officer in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Inside the car, Jung-min tried desperately to restart the engine, but no matter how many times he turned the key, it just wouldn't start. From inside the car, he watched in fear as the female officer was overpowered. With no time to lose, Jung-min grabbed the pistol from the passenger seat and fired. The bullet hit but only grazed Choi's arm. They clashed again. Jung-min was quickly overpowered.
죽이고 네 가족도 내가 다 찢어.
But as death closed in, something inside him ignited, a pure, primal instinct to survive. With one explosive move, he flipped Choi over and locked his arms around the man's neck. Choi, already injured in the shoulder, began to weaken. They crashed to the ground together. Jung-min held on tight. Even as Choi's breath faded to nothing, he never let go. By the time backup arrived, Jung-min was already stiff as a board. It took a serious effort for the cops to pry them apart. Though both Jung-min and Min-yeon were ultimately rescued, the ordeal left Jung-min deeply traumatized. He vanished from the public eye for a long while. 2 years flew by. Jung-min's harrowing experience was turned into a movie. His own brother, Sung-won, who played him in the film, introduced him to a newcomer. For a moment, Jung-min thought he was seeing Choi Dong-ji again.
똑같이.
저 진짜 죄송한데 저랑 같이 사진 한 장만 찍어주실 수 있나요?
As the young man reached out his hand, Jung-min froze. Should he shake it or not? As an actor, he could no longer tell where the movie ended and real life began.